Hello and welcome to Sam Not So Wise. My name is Sam. Now, I'm not usually a big TBR maker, both in terms of videos and just generally in my reading habits. I usually just tag them on to a monthly wrap up and leave a little bit of wiggle room in there. Now, there is going to be some wiggle room on this TBR video because, again, that's just how I work. But I have two reasons that I'm making this TBR video today. One is I'm going on holiday. So as of 2 days from recording this, I will be in Helsinki right now. So I'm very excited to be going on holiday. So I wanted to make something a little bit lighter to film in advance for my usual Sunday releases, as this week is just too busy for me to really put in a lot of effort or thought or whatever into a video. Not that you can usually tell that I do that, hey, but I just wanted something quick and easy to put out before I leave in this busy week. Also, not loads of people watch my wrap up, which is fine. So it'll also let people know what I have planned to read who don't usually watch those wrap ups. So that's useful for those people who are interested. Now, summer, you ask? Yes, I'm considering it summer from now until basically the end of August. Yesterday here in Reykjavik was bright and sunny and it felt very summery, but also Iceland only really has two seasons, winter and a kind of summer. So, you know, it felt like the right time for me. So in this video, I'm going to let you know the definite books that I'll be reading over the next few months of the summer. Some, if I have time, possibilities that I really hope to get to if the reading goes well, and then some long shots if it goes really well. So with so much further ado, let's talk about my reading plans for the summer. So I'll start off by talking about those definite series that I'll be reading over the summer. And the first one is pretty easy to talk about because I am about a third-ish of the way through this third book in the 4-book series, and that's the Dandelion Dynasty. So yes, I am reading The Veiled Throne now, and I will be reading Speaking Bones next month in June to wrap up the series for sure. This was my priority series for the year, so I will be very happy to have it done by the summer. So I'm loving the series so far. It's kind of very slow and methodical in its storytelling, full of kind of folklorish storytelling in a way as well, with a big focus on political scheming, technological advancement, educational advancements, and privilege and power versus peasantry. Really fun series. So this will definitely be finished by the end of June for sure. Big ass book, so it's going to take a lot of reading. Oh, so professional as always. The next series and another priority for the year, not to finish, but to begin, is Malazan Book of the Fallen. So I will be reading Gardens of the Moon for sure, maybe around July. Yeah, so I'm finally going to start this absolute juggernaut of a series. I've been intimidated for a long time, but finally I feel like I have the reading chops to be able to tackle it. Now, the timing of this reading is highly intentional because I'm in studies at the moment, and I'm reading in a break from university this book because I feel like I want to have a full attention given to these books, like enough brain space to be able to focus on it with all of my attention. So that's the plan going forward with this series. I will read it when I have breaks from my university course. So this summer I want to be able to read Gardens of the Moon and follow up with Dead House Gates for sure, and then I'll take a break until kind of Christmas time when I have another break from university. So yes, I'll definitely be starting Malazan Book of the Fallen, hopefully getting to the first 2 books. So my usual reading habits are that I read a series, and between books in a series I'll read 1 or 2 standalones just to kind of keep the mind fresh, and get to a bunch more reads that I want to get to. So I've got a lot of standalones that I'm planning on reading over the summer. So the first one for sure that will definitely be happening in June is Anathem by Neil Stevenson. I've never read a Neil Stevenson book before, and this seems like a great place to start, seeing as it's perhaps his most famous book. But I'm going to be doing this in a buddy read with my buddy read pals Bart and Whitney. So this is why it's definitely going to be happening in June, because we basically have a date to start that. And I'm very glad that I have this as a buddy read, as I hear it's quite dense and difficult. So it's going to be good to have some people to bounce off. So yes, definitely getting to Anathem in June. So the next standalone, it's not really a standalone, is it? But I think a lot of people read it as a standalone, so I'm going to count it as a standalone, is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Now, I mentioned in a recent-ish video that I want to read a lot more classics. I'll pop that video in a link in the description if you want to check that out. So yeah, I plan on reading a lot more classics over basically the rest of my life, really, but I want to try and get into them in my near future. I found this one in a secondhand bookshop, and I read a couple of Twain's short stories in university. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in his long form and reading this extremely famous book. So this one is definitely going to be happening in the summer. Another definite I'm going to read is The Unconsoled by Kazuo Ishiguro, who is one of my top 10 authors of all time. Now, my last video I made was about completing authors' back catalogues. Link in the description as always. And Ishiguro is kind of my biggest priorities with regards to this. So I need to read this to get closer to finishing his back catalogue. Now, I've heard this isn't a great one of his, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I trust Kazuo Ishiguro to at least keep me somewhat interested, and hopefully it will be better than other people have told me it is, which sometimes does happen, so, you know, let's hope. So I'll read this, and I'll only have one more of his to read, which will be later in the year for sure, but definitely getting to another Ishiguro over the summer. Now, the next definite standalone book I will be reading is While Darkness Gathers by Philip Chase, our good old friend, Dr. Fantasy himself, BookTube all-star. Now, he is a fantastic author, and I have read and loved his Idan trilogy, a top 15 series for me for sure. So this standalone sequel is coming out in June, so I'm really eager to pick it up and see what the Idan crew are getting up to these days. Now, it may not necessarily be a release day read for me, but I will 100% be reading it before the leaves start turning red. So if you haven't checked out the Idan trilogy yet, I highly recommend you do so. It is a wonderful trilogy, and I will be getting to this sequel this summer for sure. Into some classic sci-fi, I will definitely be reading The Gods Themselves by that man Isaac Asimov. Now, this was a gift from the lovely Whitney, my buddy reading partner, which is such a thoughtful and kind thing to do. I'm very intrigued to read more Asimov, so this is a must for me this summer, having owned it and got this wonderful gift from Whitney. Also, the concept sounds really fascinating, and it is a good length to use as one of those books that I squeeze in between those series reads, as I mentioned. So definitely getting to The Gods Themselves. So I'm definitely going to read more Ursula Le Guin over the summer as well, but it's not going to be novels. So I bought a short story collection called The Wind's 12 Quarters, and the plan is to basically read these intermittently while I'm reading these huge, heavy reads such as Malazan or Anathem, just to kind of lighten up the load whilst I'm reading these massive, difficult, dense books. Also as practice for analysing stories for like my uni stuff. I mean, I'm very new to this, but I want to try and give it a go over the summer to keep my brain ticking along. So when I find a story that I find particularly interesting or worth talking about, I'm going to try and do a little bit of analysis just for myself for fun at home. Also, I bought a collection of essays by Le Guin called Dreams Must Explain Themselves. So yeah, it's a collection of non-fiction works of her. I'm not exactly sure what, but I just want to see how she writes as in her non-fiction, and kind of a similar plan to what I said with the short stories. Think about these, maybe write something about them if I feel like I have something to say. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading some shorter works by Le Guin to exercise my brain over the summer while I am away from university. So now we'll talk about those books that I'll get to if the reading is going really well and I have time to squeeze some other books in. So the first one will be Dead Air by Ian Banks, my favourite author of all time. I need to get to more of his works and get closer to finishing his rather large back catalogue. So this is a guaranteed for this year, whether it will be summer or autumn, depends on how life and reading goes, but this one is very soon in the TBR. Continuing with classics, as I said, I want to get to more classics, and I have The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Found this for very cheap in secondhand bookshop, and I hear wonderful things about it. I don't think it's too long. Sometimes these Penguin classics can be deceiving, but I want to get to more Steinbeck for sure. Some classic sci-fi, I have Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. So I've only read Slaughterhouse 5 by him and absolutely loved it, so I really need to get more of his works. This is only a tiny wee baby, so this should probably be more likely to be squeezed in over the summer. This is an interesting one, Fever Dream by George R.R. Martin. I am dying to get to some Martin that isn't A Song of Ice and Fire, and I've heard that this is really good. And again, it's not overly long. How long are you? About 400 pages. So hopefully I can squeeze that in if I have time. One series that I might get to is Gunmetal Gods. So this is kind of my third priority series of the year. So should I get through the Dandelion Dynasty and past Deadhouse Gates with time to begin before summer ends, I will definitely start this series as soon as I possibly can. So hopefully I can start that series for sure. Another one I'm very much interested in is James by Percival Everett. This has been doing the rounds a little bit in at least the corner of BookTube that I watch. And it's like a retelling of Huckleberry Finn. So it'll be very interesting to read it not long after having read Huckleberry Finn earlier in the summer. So hopefully I'll have time to read that and kind of compare and contrast and see what Percival Everett has changed. And another one I may squeeze in, again, kind of short-ish, is The Long Walk by Stephen King. I love me some Stephen King, and I've only read one book by King this year, so I really want to get to more. And I love me some kind of dystopian, and this is a dystopian book by Stephen King, so if I have time, I'll squeeze this in for sure. So let's just quickly bash through those long shots, those books that maybe I'll get to if somehow things go amazingly well and I read all of those books, or I hear someone talk about these books in a way that pushes them up the TBR. So I own a bunch of classic sci-fi on my Kindle, such as Inverted World, Rendezvous with Rama, Babel 17, The Forever War, The Death of Grass, and I have another kind of short story collection called 10,000 Light Years from Home, which is by James Tiptree Jr., which is perhaps more likely if I manage to get through those Le Guin stories that I mentioned earlier. I also own on my Kindle books such as The Doors of Eden, Days of Shattered Faith, both by Tchaikovsky, who I really want to get to more of, The Girl with All the Gifts, and The Black Song Thief, and I think that is probably about it. So that is it for today's TBR video. If you've made it this far into the video, I thank you as always. It really helps the channel. So I want to know from you wonderful viewers, what would you like to see me read from the books that kind of aren't 100%? What are you maybe looking forward to me reading from my definite reads? And what are you planning to read over the summer? Do you read kind of seasonally? Do you read summary books? I don't really do that, but let me know if you do. It would be wonderful to have a conversation in the comments. But that is it for now. If you liked the video, please press the little like button that you see under the screen. And if you are new to the channel, please think about subscribing. Talk to me in the comments. And that is it for now. So I'll see you in another video soon. Goodbye.